Hi, my name is Jason Martin, and I'm with the American Alpine Institute. And I've been here since the year 2000, and this is a beautiful mountain. This is Denali, and I want to talk to you today about our mountain flexibility in the summit day. I've been here a long time, and I know a lot about this mountain, and I want to share what I've learned about this mountain and how we operate on the mountain in order to provide the best experience and the highest number of folks getting to the summit. Without further ado, we'll talk about that. So we adhere to the 9 climber and 3 guide concept. Some companies do the 6 climber to 3 or 6 climber to 2 guide concept. We do the 9 to 3. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. The idea is that we always have 3 guides. We have 3 guides available to help with anything that goes wrong. If you end up on a smaller trip, occasionally a trip doesn't fill all the way up and you end up with a 2 guides to 6 climbers type situation, we'll work with that. But the goal is to have 9 climbers and 3 guides. This gives us a lot of flexibility. So this primarily gives us flexibility with the concept of spinning. Spinning is when a person decides that they can no longer climb the mountain, or on a rare occasion where a guide asks to tell somebody that they're not really going to make it, or they're not going to make it at a speed that is adequate for the team to be able to tag the summit and come back down safely, or to get to a camp safely. So I want to talk about why people spin. The most common reason people spin is because the mountain is more physically demanding than they expected. In some cases, the guides can see that, where a person is just breaking down over a period of time. Other times, the person feels that on their own. In other words, this isn't a marathon where you're just doing something in one day. This is a marathon where you're doing something over 3 weeks with a few rest days thrown in, but some people just don't recover. And they don't recover because it's more than just physically demanding. They don't recover because they might also have issues with altitude or cold. These things can really, really weigh on a person, especially over a period of time. Now, if you're having issues with altitude or cold, please, please, please tell your guide. We can work with you on these things. If you take any medications or anything to help with altitude, please, please, please tell your guide. If you're having issues with the cold, please tell your guide. The guide's not going to turn you around if you say, hey, I'm having problems with the cold. What the guide's going to first do is try to help you with your problems with the cold. The long-term snow camping and glacier living can be something that really weighs on people. So we have another video. You can see it right here. I'm linking it right, well, I don't know, somewhere over here where my finger's pointing. And this is about training for the mountain. And so that's going to be a really important thing, is to train for the mountain adequately. And that training is not just physical training, it's also training to live in the cold, to live in the snow, to be in a tent for a month, not just on a flat dirt trail, but on the glacier, and dealing with that kind of cold, the cold and snow issues that you end up dealing with this long-term exposure. And sometimes people don't talk about the fact that it's also exposure to extreme sunlight too. And things like sunburns can turn people around sometimes because they're not taking care of themselves. And that brings us to this concept of self-management combined with other issues. If you're not eating well, if you're not drinking, if you're not taking care of your hands and feet, if you're not putting on layers when you need to put on layers and taking them off when you need to take them off, if you're not able to manage your sled, if you're not able to manage the weights, if you're not able to pack your sled on time, if you're really holding everybody up, this is where sometimes we can end up with an issue of significant self-management, where the guides on a public trip don't have the bandwidth to help you with all these things. If you need lots of additional help, you should consider a private trip, a private program. And so self-management, this is where all that additional training comes in. So a lot of times, most of the time, when it comes to one of these things, the person decides to spin on their own. I don't want to scare people. It's actually really rare that a guide has to say to somebody, hey, we need to turn you around. That's rare. It happens though. It doesn't happen to people who have put in the right kind of training. And that training is everything from protecting your ears in the cold to protecting your fingers in the cold to having the right physical fitness to being able to put your sleds together and live on the glacier. All of those things work together to make it likely that you're going to be successful. Now, there's nothing we can do about weather. And sometimes we all have to spin when there's weather. And sometimes you have to spin because of illness or injury. Sometimes anybody, including the guide, may have to spin because of illness or injury. This can happen to anybody, and it's part of our mountain ethics to recognize that you may be a person that might have to spin, that I or your guide might have to be a person that spins. The person who looks like they're the fittest, strongest person on the team, the person with 6 of the other 7 summits under their belt, plus a bunch of high altitude experience, they might have to spin. You just never know. Things can creep up on you. So we want to prepare as best as possible for that. Now, what everybody worries about is, well, what happens if somebody spins? What happens to me if I'm in good shape? What happens if somebody else has to spin? Well, that's what our guides train to deal with. And we do this by working with others on descent. So first, we can work with our other guides from our company who are going down while maybe our team's still going up, to pick up people. So you on one of our trips might be going down and you'll see the guides start to talk to somebody else who they know from all their work in other places. And you know, you're suddenly gonna have a new friend on your team and we'll take that person down. That really is helpful when it comes to the way we operate. Separately, we work with other guides from other companies, and so we might choose to send somebody down with either somebody from one of our other teams or with somebody from another company to go down. And we work together. All the guides in the mountain work together to help facilitate taking people out. Now, there may be mitigating circumstances, either with our other team, they might be bringing somebody out who's got a real illness or something, an emergency, and that might not allow for that. But generally speaking, this system works really well. Now, here's the other thing. Our junior guides are generally the guides that have to turn around first. The way our guides are paid is that they have to be on the mountain for a certain amount of time in order to get their entire contract paid for. So we incentivize the junior guides to bring somebody down. If we can't send somebody down with another guide service, we incentivize those junior guides to bring somebody down and then come back up. They'll hitch a ride on somebody else's rope team to come back up. And they'll rejoin the team in order to help facilitate the rest of the trip. And so that's really helpful. Having 3 guides when we get to the high camp can be really, really helpful. We don't always have it. Can't promise it. Every trip is different. Every trip has its own issues, its own weirdness, but that's our goal. So when it comes to summit strategy, we start with trying to pick the right summit window. Now, you might be at 14 camp and looking up there at 17 camp and saying, like, why aren't we moving? It's so nice down here. But what you can't necessarily see is that it's blowing like crazy up there. And so we're looking for that weather window, and we do have a meteorologist that works with us to help us choose that window. The guides will get that information from the meteorologist. They'll also get information from other places in order to make a determination as to when we're going to move up to 17 camp. Now, that's camp 4. When we move up to 17 camp, the ideal is that we have at minimum 2 days, but ideally 4 or 5 days of a nice weather window. Ideally, we can get to 17 camp and have a down day for everybody to acclimatize before we go for the summit. Can't promise that. Sometimes we're threading the needle and there's a very limited time to go up and go down. But the nice thing is that with lots of daylight, almost 24 hours of daylight, we have a lot of time once we get up there. We want to have that break and then we want to go for it once the weather looks good. Okay, So we're then going to work, as I said, we're going to work to get as many guides up high as possible. And if something happens where somebody has to spin, we'll spin that third guide first, then the second guide, then the lead guide, of course, will turn around at the end. If there's some issue in that last moment where we can't summit. And so we're looking for that right window. We're looking to thread that needle, and we're looking to have all three guides up there if possible. Um, the lead guide will have the most experience on the mountain and will generally be the one who is best at finding that window, that little spot to weave through and get you to the summit. Now, the guides are very proud of trying to get as many people as possible to the summit. It is something that they're working toward. Every single guide wants to summit. The junior guides, the second and third guide really, really want to summit because they can't advance at our company without getting to the summit. So everybody's working together to get up to the summit. Everybody wants to make it. There's not a desire to just get down early amongst our guide staff anyway. And so that's the goal. Three guides up there, lots of support. Can't always promise it. We have trips that get up to 17 with only one guide because of all kinds of mitigating circumstances. But we do everything we can to get those three guides up there. That's our strategy. Okay, so with that in mind, you are welcome to communicate with us at any time. You can find us on the web, alpineinstitute.com. You can call us at 360-671-1505, or you can email us at info@alpineinstitute.com. And we would love to talk to you about summit strategies and about anything else that you'd like to talk about when it comes to Denali or any other mountain in the world. We love to talk about mountains. And you know what? I'd love to see you out there. And maybe that's where I'll see you. So thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.